So in section 8.1 you have a lot of equations that have x being squared or some variable being squared. Okay, so anytime you're trying to get this the x by itself, the undoing operation is going to be taking the square root of both sides. Because when you do that, a square root cancels out as squared. There's just one important thing that's a little different than other typical equations. You got to remember it's positive or negative square root of 8 over here. Okay, because if you put in a negative square root of 8 into this equation, negative square root of 8 times negative square root of 8 would give you a positive. Sorry, what am I saying? Yeah, they'll give you a positive 8, because a negative times a negative would make a positive. So basically, anytime you take a square root to cancel out a squared, put that plus or minus symbol to show that it could be a positive of this, or it could be a negative of this. Also, mathematicians like to say that this isn't simplified. A radical, we like to see that in the smallest radical form. So that involves trying to pull out a radical that you think you can. That you can take the square root of perfectly. So you can see, I know that 4 times 2 makes 8. I was able to factor out that 4, and that's great because now my radical is much smaller. Now I have 2 square roots of 2, so the number inside the radical is smaller. In this class, I'm not going to be picky about that. Showing me this is fine. You give me this on an exam, I'll say it's right. But just so you know, this would be what you would see in the textbook if you're trying to check your answers on the odd problems. So you'll have to use that trick in a couple of different ways. Like in this problem I'm writing here, x squared isn't by itself. Do not take the square root just yet. You got to get x squared by itself first. So you know how to solve an equation by now. You add that 4 to both sides. You get 3x squared equals 12. And then you know how to get x squared by itself. You divide that 3 out. So when you do that, you have x squared equals 4, and now you can take the square root. So the final answer for this one is x equals positive or negative 2. So in this type of problem, just make sure you get x squared by itself before you try to take the square root. And the same thing happens with this type of problem. Now this time the whole parentheses is being squared, and we need to get that x out so we can set it all by itself. So if you take the square root right off the bat here, keep in mind that's a positive or negative 3. And then you have to add that 4 to both sides to get x by itself. So when you do that, you're going to get, now, you can do it 2 different ways. You can do 4 plus 3 or 4 minus 3, okay? But your final answers here should be x equals 7, x equals 1.